What Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is doing right now should be impossible. Before the 2021 season, only 3 women have ever run sub 10.70 in the 100-meter dash. That's Marion Jones, Carmelita Jeter, and FloJo. Since then, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce has gone sub 10.7 7 total times. Those 3 women that I mentioned before did it a total of 6 times. She is showing that she's the greatest sprinter of all time, and there is no debate. Also, she's doing this at 36 years old. The oldest woman to go sub 10.7 before this was 28. She's proving that time is nothing, and she's able to compete at a very high level at an age that people didn't think was possible. If you look at the top 10 list for both the men and the women, to be in the top 10 for the men, the average age is 25.4 years old. On the women, it's 27.5 years old. She is competing at a high level, nearly a decade older than the average person on this list. While many people think that we've never seen an athlete like Shelly before and we'll never see one again, really, that might not be the case, and this could be the start of something very, very special. I'm Colin, and I'm the host of Track World News presented by Track Barn, and today we have a very special episode talking all about Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce. We're going to be looking at the Commonwealth Games and see what the United States can learn from them. Also, we're going to be talking about college transferring and what the future of track and field and recruiting for the NCAA could look like. You're not going to want to miss this episode. It's crazy to think, but summer is finally over. If you don't want to be looking crazy on your first day back to school or on your first day back to fall training, the sponsor of today's video, Manscaped, has you covered. Manscaped just sent me their brand new performance package, which comes with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all your goodies. Look, I've tried a lot of razors in my day, but the Lawnmower 4.0 is just different. Its ceramic blade helps reduce grooming accidents, LED light allows you to shave anytime, anywhere, and since it's waterproof, you can even take it in the shower if you want. You know what they say, look good, feel good, run good. If you want to show up to fall training and dominate like a beast, make sure you use code TWN at checkout when shopping with Manscaped and have an awesome fall training. We'll see you there. Hey everyone, so this episode was actually made before Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce ran her sub 10.7 in Hungary. So we talk about the number 6 as if she had done it 6 times, when in reality, she has actually done it now 7 times, which just goes to show how impressive her year and her career has been. We also talk about the men's 100 from Poland, but in reality, there's not too much to talk about. Same thing with the men's 100 in Hungary. It was Bromell and Bracy that were going 1-2. Not a whole lot to talk about there, so wanted to just give you that quick note before the episode gets started. At the Poland Diamond League meet, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce wins the 100 with a world-leading time of 10.66. Aaliyah Hobbs comes in second with a 10.94. Toulouse comes in third with an 11.0. Then we have Lukenkemper with an 11.1. Williams with an 11.11, White with 11.15, Melissa Jefferson 11.18, Twanisha Terry 11.20, and then Morrison with an 11.20 as well. And so like we said, what Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is doing right now is unprecedented. So I took a look at some of the biggest icons that we have when it comes to track and field. And so right now, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is in a world of her own on the women's side with having 6 of the 10 fastest times, or 12 fastest times we've ever seen, all coming out of just Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce. And so I created this graph taking a look at some of the greats when it comes to sprinting on both the men and the women's side. So here we have Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, Carmelita Jeter, Veronica Campbell-Brown, Usain Bolt, Justin Gatlin, and Carl Lewis. If you're listening to the audio version, you might want to go and take a look on YouTube. I have this graph that you can see. And so what you'll notice is that many of these athletes run their fastest time sometime in their mid-20s, and then after that, they'll continue running until their late 30s, and their times begin to go up as they start to run slower, because that's just the natural way that things go. But when you take a look at what Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is doing right now, not only is she maintaining her speed, which many of these athletes haven't been able to do, she's getting faster, because it goes the same for not only women, but men as well. When you take a look at Usain Bolt, I mean, he ran his world record time at 22, and then it just started trending in the upwards direction after that. You know, same with Carl Lewis. I mean, Carl Lewis ran some of his fastest times early on in his career, and then it began to go and start trending in the upwards direction. And so what we're seeing from Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is an anomaly. No one else has been doing what she's been doing. There's only been 3 athletes that have ever ran a top 10 times in their 30s. So 1, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, 2, Merlene Ottey, and 3, Justin Gatlin. They're the only 3 to do it. Gatlin ran it when he was 33, Merlene Ottey ran it when she was 36, and then Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce ran it when she was 34. And so other than that, everyone else is in their 20s when they're running. Like I said, the average age for a top 10 time on the women's side is 27.5 years old. The average age for the men is 25.4 years old. So we're starting to see a trend here where athletes are running faster at an older age. We used to believe, and when it came to sprinting, that, hey, if you're gonna be a fast sprinter, you have to start running these great times before you're 24. If you look at some of the most recent additions on at least the men's side when it comes to the top 10 list, you have Fred Kerley and Trayvon Bromell. Both of these athletes being 26 and 27 when they run on the top 10 list. And so that's showing that's 2 years over what the average is. And this average is taking into consideration those 2 times ran by those athletes. And so if you take them out and replace them with the next person up, it would be going down dramatically. And so it's showing that athletes are finding ways to not only run faster longer, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see, you know, women running elite times into their 40s at this point. Because right now, I mean, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, 35 years old, and she's still running 10.66. These are times we never thought was possible. I mean, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are athletes right now that are going to be able to run elite times by the time they're 40. Justin Gatlin would have had the opportunity to run sub 10 at 40 years old if he decided to continue running this year, because he was still running in the 9.9s last season when he was 39 years old. But it's not only that on that end of the spectrum, we're seeing it on the flip side as well. Athletes are running faster earlier. Let's take 2 examples of this. Letsili Tebogo and Erriyon Knighton. Both of these athletes, being 18 and 19 years old, are running times that we thought was impossible for people of that age to do. In the 100, Tebogo running 991, and on the 200 side, Erriyon Knighton running a 1949. And I think that we're gonna see them continue to extend their career as they're more smart with how many times they run. Training is getting better, recovery is getting better, diet's getting better, sleep is getting better. All of these things are improving, which is allowing athletes to extend their career and extend the amount of years they're able to compete and all of that stuff. And so they're taking care of their bodies better, and they're able to run faster for a longer period of time. Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is going to be the start of what we're seeing right now of athletes being able to run elite times at older ages, because it's unheard of to be, you know, running 10.6s at all, let alone at 35 years old. And so the another question is like, hey, is she gonna be able to go under that, get into the 10.5s? Because she does have 10.60 as her best. It's the men's 100. I didn't take too much out of it. I mean, Trayvon Bromell wins with a 9.95. Bracy, second, 10.0. Akeem Blake, third, 10.0. Coleman, fourth, 10.13. Johan Blake, 10.13. Elijah Hall, 10.14. Sonny Brown, 10.15. Simbine, 10.21. Kyrie King, 10.29. And I'm not taking really anything from this race, to be honest. For Bracy and Bromell, I mean, it seemed like the weather wasn't great, and the track looked like it was wet, and these 2 are expected to go 1-2. Bromell and Bracy are expected to go 1-2. I'm not, like, if you told me Bracy won, you told me Bromell won, I wouldn't have been surprised either way. Like, those 2 are supposed to go 1-2. I'm not taking anything when it comes to it from them. What I would be taking some notes from is Christian Coleman's performance. So Christian Coleman is kind of not been in the right situations as of recently. He runs a 10.13, or was it a 10.13? Yeah, 10.13. So he's not really trending in the right direction here. Now you do have to take into consideration he is coming off of an 18-month suspension, so it's been a long time since he's competed, and it's a similar type of thing that we saw when you take a look at Gatlin's return. Like it took some time for him to get back into the swing of things here. So you know it's understandable that you're not going to be running at your best, but it's I'm hoping that this year is just kind of a wash year for him, where it's like, look, I'm coming off suspension. It just wasn't my year, you know, when it comes down to it, and we'll get after it next season. Because when you look at the times that he's running, it's like, you're better than this. Like, the Christian Coleman that we know is not the Christian Coleman we're seeing this year. Like, this guy, like we said before, he had never, in his entire career, he had never ran a 10-0 or above race 3 times in a row. He had never done it since he broke 10 seconds. And now he hasn't ran a 9-second race back-to-back once. Like, so this isn't the Christian Coleman that we know. Like, he is running slow as hell compared to how good he is. Like, we know he's better than this. And so my big question is, what's the Christian Coleman we're gonna get next year? This year, I'm cashed out on him right now. Like, he's not running as well as we know he can. Like, he's ran his 987 once. He did it at the US Championship. But other than that, we're seeing a bunch of 10-1s, you know, 10-09s, 10-13s, like all of these things. They're just not, it's not Christian Coleman-esque. And so it's understandable. You know, you've been off the track for a little while now when it comes to competition, and all these other people are now new names that you didn't have to worry about when you were there. Like, he didn't have to worry about Trayvon Bromell back in 2019. Same with like Marvin Bracey. He wasn't worried about Fred Curley. Like, these guys are either injured or not competing in his event. And now these are 3 guys that you got to worry about. And so it's a whole new situation, whole new faces, whole new names that he's, you know, going up against. And it's clearly showing. It's just not things just aren't working for him. And like I said, I think it's fine. I think next year will be a bigger deterrent on, or not deterrent, determinating factor on how's the remainder of his career going to go. Is this just kind of like a dry spell, or is this going to be the new kind of Coleman we see? I don't think it is. I think he'll figure stuff out, and next year will be a better year for him. But you know, it's fine. Like in all other sports, you're allowed to have a bad year. In basketball, football, all that, you're allowed to have a down year and your legacy isn't tarnished. It's just crazy in track and field. You have a bad year and everyone's like, you're never gonna win again. You're gonna be garbage for the rest of your career, which I think is dumb. But I'm hoping he gets a bounce back, because this season just hasn't been it for him. The Commonwealth Games for a second. So we won't be going over like performances and times and all that stuff too much. I know that obviously Elaine Thompson-Herah did the double there, and you had Richards winning in the 200. Like, those are performances that were fantastic and definitely notable ones to take a look at. But what we're going to be talking about mainly is the presentation of the Commonwealth Games, the attendance, and how United States Track and Field can learn something from what the Commonwealth Games just did. So there's been a couple videos going around of Commonwealth of them having an entirely packed full stadium of 30,000 fans, and that's what it was like for pretty much the entire meet, where just tons of athletes tons of fans are at the Commonwealth Games. There are tons of fans that were in the stands there. Like, it was completely filled out. And it was like that for even events that were non-finals. Like, even during like decathlon, high jump, it was filled out. And so it goes to show that there is an ability to have these amount of fans here in the United States. And so when people are like, oh man, track and field isn't big here, it never will be, it's always gonna be lame, there's never gonna be people here, I don't buy that, because I'm seeing it in other disciplines. And sure, I don't think every single track meet is gonna look like that, because every single basketball game doesn't look like that. Every single sporting event and other, you know, things don't look like that. Like, go to a Jets football game, you know, against the Jaguars, it's not going to be filled out, you know. But if you go to you know, playoff games or other rivalry matchups, it will be. And so I think that there is an ability to have much more much better sellouts here. And so I think it's a few different things. So one is the education of track and field to the fans, and that's directed mainly through the media. And so one thing that they do better in the UK and Europe is the education of the sport for their fans and just the overall media attention that it has. Track and field is presented as one of the top sports when it comes to Europe. So it's over in, like they're talking about it a lot more. It's in their media outlets. People know who these athletes are. In the United States, that's not the case. In order to be broadcasted at all when it comes to SportsCenter or ESPN or anything like that, one, you have to be like a super notable name doing something super crazy, whether that's for the good or for the bad. We saw Sha'Carri Richardson getting a lot of talks when she got caught with her marijuana suspension. But when we see great things, we don't get a lot of attention. Like, for example, Fred Kerley winning the World Championships. There really wasn't no articles or anything on SportsCenter about what Fred Kerley was doing. So it doesn't get a lot of media attention. Also, take a look at Sports Illustrated. So before, if you take a look at the cover athletes for Sports Illustrated, there have been 74 track and field athletes on the cover of Sports Illustrated. The most have been Usain Bolt. So during the Usain Bolt era, he was on, I believe, like 7 or 8 different covers for Usain Bolt. Since the Bolt era has ended, there has only been 2 athletes on the cover, and those were both high school National Athlete of the Year. So it was Caitlin Toohey and Sydney McLaughlin. Those are the only other 2. There's never been any professional athletes outside of Usain Bolt on it. Before the Usain Bolt was on it, back in the 80s and 90s was when we saw a lot of athletes on it, even elite athletes. There was just random college athletes, there that weren't notable for, the size that we know. Like athletes that are much smaller than what a Fred Kerley is today was on it back in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. And so it's just not a notable, sport. And so that comes from the media. And so that's what we're trying to do here at Track World News, like get more people involved in the space. But it's also something where these larger media outlets have to have some dedication to it. Like, will we get some dedicated segments for track and field? If the answer is yes, then you're going to see more people watching it. But if the answer is no, then it's going to maintain and stay how it is because you need to have better exposure. It's going on primarily during the summer and spring months. This is when we don't have a lot of sports going on. Like right now, it's baseball and track and field really, but we don't get a lot of things on track and field. We're seeing more things about basketball free agency and where's Kevin Durant going to go. We've been talking about this for a month now. Where's Kevin Durant going to get traded? He demanded a trade. It's not going to change. The story you reported yesterday is not going to be any different than the story you're reporting today. So how about instead of just talking about that, talk about some actual sports that are going on, like track and field, and getting some more notoriety there, because it is exciting, but you're not talking about it. And so that's something that's kind of frustrating, and I wish that we would see, because it's like, look, what are you going to do? Talk about LeBron, how this impacts LeBron's legacy for the 5 millionth time instead of some other sports that are going on? Like, please, let's change it up a little bit here. So there is a possibility for it to improve. Will it? I don't know. I think that USATF is going to have a better relationship with ESPN because NBC, their sports networks aren't big enough, and we don't have any relationship with ESPN, which has these relationships with SportsCenter and all that type of stuff. So it's just not going to be a priority for them to put it on there. Same thing with the NHL. The NHL was on NBC, and then they moved it over to ESPN. More people watched it. More people were involved. It was talked about more because it was their product. And so that's what we have to do when it comes to track and field. Have a better relationship when it comes to ESPN and all these people, so they're now incentivized to broadcast our sport. Now, finally, I want to talk about the college track and field movement that we have been seeing. So there have been a lot of fluctuating parts when it comes to college track and field right now. and not just track and field, but just overall sports in general. First, when it comes to the institutions, many of these colleges are changing conferences. You got schools moving from the Big 12 to the SEC, you got schools in the Pac-12 moving to the Big 10, you've got schools moving in and out and changing conferences and locations, and like it's the Big 5 or the Power 5 is now really like the Power 4 because the Pac-12 is really, diminishing with the amount of teams that are leaving, and so it's just been a lot of movement when it comes to the school side of things. On top of that, we're also seeing a lot of movement from the athlete side of things. If you haven't been living under a rock, you'll know that, Arkansas, Florida, and Auburn have been just like eating up all of the transfer recruits as of recently. Like, if you're an athlete that's been in the transfer portal and you're a top tier athlete, you're probably either going to Arkansas, Auburn, or Florida, because they've been just taking up all of the recruits there. This has a lot of impact on how track and field is going to be moving forward, and just college sports is moving in forward. And let me tell you why. Or first, how we got here, and then what the impact of these transferring and everything is gonna have for track and field moving forward. So right now, recently, what was it, I guess like 3-4 years ago now, NIL deals became allowed in the NCAA. So athletes were allowed to start making money off their name, image, and likeness, and allowing more opportunities for student athletes to make money, because everyone knows the quintessential broke college kid. These schools are making money off of their names and these athletes going there, and so it's allowing people to take that power back and some of the money back as well. And so ever since then, that's when we started seeing more movement of things, whether it be schools trying to get larger, go to larger conferences, which would then get you larger recruits, which then gets you more face time. And so we're seeing a lot of movement recently on the institutional side. On the student athlete side, we're seeing a lot of movement as well. So if you're not in the Power 5, so I didn't know this, at my point, because I went to a very small school, but if you're a Power 5 athlete, you're making a stipend, depending on, I think it depends on like your grades and your standing on everything, but you're making a stipend from your school just by being a student athlete. And depending on the school you're going to, where you are, you could be making anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000 a year just for being a student athlete, whether it be with a certain GPA or being in a certain conference. Like if you're in the SEC, I think, and you have like a 3.0, you make $6,000 a year. It doesn't matter whether you're the national champion, you're a walk-on, you're making that money. And so you're seeing, these schools being able to offer student athletes more and more money. And so now some of these athletes that would traditionally maybe go to a smaller school, a non-Power 5 school, now it's like, oh, well, I would like to go to a non-Power 5 school. I probably would be making, I would probably improve my performance better. It might be a better fit for me, but I have this opportunity to make some money. So maybe I go to a Power 5 school that may not be the right fit. And so I'm not talking about the names that we all know, these giant, really talented athletes. I'm talking about those athletes that they don't really score in the conference. They're just going there and competing and maybe doing well. Maybe they do score, they get 7th or 8th, and maybe in the Pac-12, the Big 12, the Big 10 conference championship. But in other words, like not athletes that we really know of, because that's who majority of student athletes really are. And so it's like, well, your performance may have impacted, and maybe your grades did as well. Like maybe you were better suited for a school that was a non-Power 5, but because they had this opportunity, you went to a larger school, and maybe it didn't work out for you. And then there's other things you got to take a look at of how this is impacting recruiting. So now we're seeing a lot more student athletes, or a lot more schools, utilize the transfer portal versus recruiting out of high school. Why? Because you know what you're getting with a student athlete that transfers. If you see a person run a 9.99 in college, you know that that's what you're getting. You know what that person has ran, you know how they perform at national championships, you know everything, so you're not guessing. When you're recruiting at a high school, you're guessing, because the high school life versus the college life is very, very different. And so it's like, hey, would I rather take an athlete that's proven, I've seen them compete at the NCAA level before, and recruit them? Or would you rather recruit an athlete out of high school where you don't know what they're gonna do? It's a wild card. You have a good idea, you're hoping that your recruiting styles, work out, but at the end of the day, you don't know how it's gonna work out. If I was a coach, I would say, oh no, yeah, let's work on the transfers. Let's get them as many as possible, because they're guaranteed. We know what we're going to be getting when we get there, versus high school, might fizzle out, might not work out. They may transfer their own. So we're seeing a lot more student athletes, getting poached from these larger schools, because it's like, hey, would you rather come to our school? We have a lot more money. We have a lot more opportunity. It's a better name, NIL. You can come here, and so you're seeing athletes transferring everywhere. Me personally, I don't think it's a bad idea. I wish that I was a student. I wish that I was talented enough, and I wish that I was a student athlete when this was going on, because then I think it's allowing for more athlete movement. Like, coaches can go wherever they want. Like, if you're a coach and you want to leave this school and go to coach at another school the next year, and then the next year you want to coach somewhere else and coach somewhere else, you can go and you can follow the money. But if you're a student athlete, you can't really do that. Like, there's limits, and when you were a scholarship athlete, like, that was all that you would get. You would make your scholarship. But now, like, it's allowing these student athletes to make money off their name, and I think it's a great idea, because we're seeing a lot of them, elevating the brands to a way that it's getting more in the mainstream. I mean, some of the biggest NIL people, Matthew Bowling, Masai Russell, like some of the, they're two of the biggest names when it comes to the advertising and NIL deal stuff. So I think that it's great for the college athletes, because you're now able to finally make money when, hey, many of these student athletes may not want to do the pro track stuff, or may not even be talented enough for pro track, but it works for NIL, and they're able to make their money and then go into the professional world and, kind of work from there. But you have to look at it where, student athletes are leaving. Like I said, I went to a very small school, and oftentimes the top talent from our school would transfer and go to a larger school, because it was better opportunities that they saw, or, you're competing for a larger school. So it's just like, that would happen pretty often. And now I can only imagine when there's the NIL aspect of things, that's going to happen even more with student athletes leaving, because it's like, oh wait, I can go to a place with a better opportunities and all that, and I can make money. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do that, because the athlete from an SEC school is gonna make a whole lot more money than athlete from a school in the MAC or in the NEC or in the Sun Belt. Like, they're just not gonna make as much money because of the school that they're at. And so this is gonna have an impact, and I'm wondering what student athlete, what it means to be a student athlete is going to look like in the next few years, because it's changing, man. Like, it's changing a lot. And so I'm wondering, in 5-6 years, when NIL has run its course even more, like, is it going to be, pretty much you have to, if you're getting recruited, if you're not like a top 5 recruit, you're not going to go to Power 5. You're going to go through, whether it be JUCO or a low-level D1 school, and then eventually transfer into these larger schools. Like, I wonder what it's gonna be, because it's changing a lot. It is changing an awful lot, and it's very interesting to see how it's going to impact the rest of college sports, for sure. But let me know what you think. What do you think about Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, Commonwealth Games, track and field, as well as college track? I would love to hear that. That's going to do it from us here, this episode of Track World News. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. Helps us know that you're enjoying all the content. Have a good one. Peace.